I think the UAE has always argued to Western leaders and to Western capitals that the region is not ready for democracy. That if democracy were to take root in the region, then it would see the rise of political Islam that the UAE argues is inherently averse and antagonistic towards the values that Europe and the US would like to see take root in the region. And the UAE often points to the results of the first free and fair elections post-Arab Spring that produced a resounding result in favor of Islamic-leaning parties, not just the Muslim Brotherhood, but also Hizb al-Nour al-Salafi in Egypt and Arida al-Sha'biyya in Tunisia. The UAE points to this as evidence that the Arab electorate is not ready for democracy in a manner that produces a result that is conducive to the values of Europe and the US. And French President Macron is on record as stating that the Arab electorate demonstrated a preference for regression as opposed to enlightenment when they voted in these free and fair elections. So the UAE understands that this argument has resonance in Europe and in Western capitals. And it is in this context that this visa ban has come about, this ban on 12 Muslim majority countries from being allowed into the UAE. This is the UAE asserting that it is also under threat from political Islam, from Muslims generally, from these Muslims who are not ready for democracy, and that the UAE is under threat from them because it is pursuing these trailblazing policies that are more aligned with European and US values, most particularly with regards to normalization of ties with Israel and pushing Islam out of the political sphere and confining it to the personal space. The problem, however, is that in implying that Muslims generally are a security threat, the UAE is lending credence to the arguments of French President Macron that the international order is under threat from what he described as Islamist terrorism. And the fear now is that states that are pursuing increased repression of Muslim rights, whether that's in the spirit of political expediency or seeking to create an enemy within that quite simply doesn't exist. The fear now is that France and others will lean on the UAE as a model to say, look, this is a Muslim country that also views Muslims as a security threat. Therefore, we are also justified in imposing our own restrictions on Muslim rights in a very similar manner to how France leaned on Tunisia's ban of the headscarf, of the hijab, under the Bin Ali regime to justify its own ban on the hijab and headscarf in state institutions, despite the fact that this was a clear contravention of basic human rights.